Welcome back, everyone. In Part 1, we explored the early warning signs of systemic decline. Today, in Part 2, we will take a deeper look into the underlying dynamics that can drive a society toward large-scale crisis. The central question that brings us together today is simple. Why would a leader continue moving toward disaster despite mounting warning signs? Many media outlets and economic analysts explain capital flight and market decline, primarily in terms of economic indicators or policy mistakes. Those explanations certainly matter, but they describe only the surface of the problem. The purpose of this lecture is to examine a broader framework, the psychological isolation of leadership, and a three-stage mechanism that may emerge when decision-making becomes increasingly disconnected from reality. We will explore how a leader's perception can become narrowed, why corrective feedback sometimes fails, and how psychological and philosophical perspectives can help us understand these patterns. Our objective is not merely to analyze history or current events, but to better recognize the warning signs of systemic instability and think more carefully about how societies can respond before crises deepen. Today we will examine three stages that can contribute to a leader's movement toward failure. The first is reality denial and confirmation bias. We will examine how warning signals from business owners, investors, and citizens may become filtered through layers of bureaucracy until they are interpreted as isolated complaints rather than indicators of a larger problem. We will also discuss how confirmation bias encourages leaders to focus primarily on information that reinforces existing beliefs while overlooking contradictory evidence. The second is collective isolation and the intensification of groupthink. As criticism grows stronger, leadership circles may become increasingly inward-looking. Moderate voices and constructive critics can gradually lose influence, leaving decision-makers surrounded primarily by those who reinforce existing assumptions. We will examine how this environment can strengthen emotional isolation and increase dependence on greater control rather than adaptive change. The third is spiritual blindness and self-destructive momentum. Drawing upon the symbolic imagery of the Tibetan Buddhist concept of the bardo, as described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, we will explore how fear itself can distort perception. Just as frightened consciousness may react to imagined threats, leaders under intense psychological pressure may adopt increasingly aggressive interventions while believing they are restoring stability, even if those actions unintentionally deepen instability. If you enjoy thoughtful analysis that explore psychology, philosophy, leadership, and social systems, please subscribe to the channel. Your subscription allows you to receive each new lecture as soon as it is released. If you believe these discussions can benefit your friends, colleagues, or family members, please share this video with them. One shared conversation can inspire deeper thinking and meaningful discussion. And if you find today's lecture valuable, please click the like button. It helps this educational content reach a wider audience through YouTube's recommendation system. Now, let's begin. Why does a leader continue toward disaster? We must now examine how psychological, institutional, and philosophical dynamics can combine into what appears to become a powerful momentum towards systemic failure. Why does the course remain unchanged, even when warning signs continue to multiply? Stage 1, reality denial and confirmation bias. Reports from entrepreneurs, small business owners, and investors may pass through several layers of interpretation before reaching national leadership. By the time they arrive, genuine concerns may be dismissed as exaggerated complaints from a limited group, rather than recognized as signals of broader structural challenges. When leaders increasingly seek information that confirms their existing worldview, confirmation bias becomes stronger. Positive indicators receive greater attention, while contradictory evidence is minimized or rationalized. As a result, leaders may sincerely believe that their policies are succeeding, even while important warning signals continue to emerge. Stage 2, collective isolation and deepening groupthink. As outside criticism intensifies, organizations sometimes respond by strengthening internal loyalty. At this stage, advisors, who recommend policy adjustments may gradually lose influence, while those who consistently reinforce existing decisions become increasingly prominent. The result is growing psychological isolation. As uncertainty increases, leaders may respond by placing even greater emphasis on authority, control, and centralized decision-making, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that makes policy correction progressively more difficult. Stage 3, spiritual blindness and self-destructive momentum. The symbolic concept of the bardo offers an interesting metaphor. Just as a frightened consciousness may mistake illusion for reality and react with increasing fear, leaders experiencing intense psychological pressure may respond to economic instability by introducing progressively stronger interventions. Without recognizing the unintended consequences of those actions, each new intervention may further weaken market confidence, encouraging additional capital outflows and slowing economic activity. Over time, fear, anger, and defensive thinking can dominate decision-making, leaving little room for reflection or self-correction. Ancient philosophical traditions often warn that individuals may ultimately become trapped by the consequences of actions they themselves set in motion. Within that symbolic framework, the leader resembles the operator of a high-speed train that continues accelerating toward a destination that becomes increasingly difficult to avoid. The public's experience existential anxiety and signs of systemic breakdown, while leaders remain confined within increasingly narrow psychological frameworks. Ordinary citizens, entrepreneurs, workers, and investors experience a very different reality. As discussed earlier, one common consequence of weakening institutions is the emergence of widespread existential anxiety. Human beings build their lives upon trust. People invest, create businesses, purchase homes, raise families, and plan for the future because they believe that legal protections, property rights, economic opportunity, and institutional stability will continue to exist. Predictability is one of the foundations of every healthy society. When confidence in those foundations begins to weaken, the earliest signals are often detected by investors and entrepreneurs, whose livelihoods depend upon accurately assessing risk. Their concern extends beyond financial loss alone. They may begin to fear that years of work, accumulated assets, and future opportunities are becoming increasingly uncertain. Capital is remarkably sensitive to risk. Once confidence declines beyond a certain threshold, capital often seeks more stable environments. Businesses relocate, investment slows, and entrepreneurial activity gradually shifts elsewhere. As this process becomes visible, public confidence may also begin to weaken. Employment opportunities become scarcer. Living costs continue rising. Trust between institutions and citizens declines. Eventually, society may become increasingly characterized by individual survival strategies rather than collective confidence. These are among the warning signs frequently associated with institutional weakening. Final summary. Today we examine the psychology of leadership through multiple perspectives. To summarize, a leader experiencing strong confirmation bias may sincerely believe that current policies remain correct, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Rather than revising earlier assumptions, psychological defense mechanisms may strengthen existing beliefs and reduce openness to contradictory information. This process cannot always be explained simply by political interests or personal history. It may also involve deep patterns of self-justification, cognitive dissonance reduction, and emotional commitment to an established worldview. Meanwhile, groupthink within leadership circles can further reduce opportunities for meaningful policy correction. From a philosophical perspective, the symbolism of the bardo represents a state in which fear clouds perception and makes escape increasingly difficult. In that sense, the greatest prison may not be a physical institution, but the psychological structures individuals unknowingly construct within their own minds. When leadership becomes disconnected from reality, the consequences are rarely borne by leaders alone. Ordinary citizens, workers, businesses, and future generations often bear the greatest costs. For that reason, these questions should not be viewed solely through the lens of politics or economics. They also invite us to examine the deeper dimensions of human psychology, institutional resilience, philosophy, and collective responsibility. Perhaps the most effective safeguard against collective blindness is a society that remains intellectually curious, willing to question assumptions, and committed to open dialogue. I hope today's lecture has provided meaningful insights and expanded your perspective on the complex relationship between leadership, psychology, and social systems. If you found this lecture valuable, please subscribe, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. In our next lecture, we will explore constructive approaches to rebuilding institutional trust and creating conditions for renewed stability and long-term prosperity. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for staying with me until the very end.